guys, how you doing? Welcome to episode 2 of the Sportsman's Quest Turkey video cast / podcast. Today we're going to talk about sighting in your bow and patterning in your shotgun. We're also going to talk a little bit about hunting strategies, different types, and what you can do to kind of achieve and have success at both of them. So first thing we're going to talk about is sighting in your bow and some turkey hunting and shooting tips from Aaron. So, Aaron, I'm going to pass it to you. Go ahead and spit your knowledge, buddy.
All right. So, with bow to start, what I like to do is mainly practice closer shots with turkey hunting. They have smaller vitals. Usually you can get them in closer if you're using decoys. So usually you have a closer shot. Sometimes you can shoot them right off your decoy. So depending on how far you put your decoys, most time, at least my shots, are between 5 yards and 15, 20 yards. So just consistently practicing closer shots, that's the big thing. Shot placement is very important with a bow. If you're not going for the head with a guillotine broadhead, shot placement is key. You're hitting that big of vitals. It's about the size of a softball. And what I do to kind of look at where I'm shooting for the turkey is find the beard. Usually if they're facing you, I'll aim right at the base of the beard. If they're fanned out in a side profile, walking in the side profile, either one, I'll take that beard at the base, run that across, and put that height, that horizontal height, right in line with their legs, and that's usually about the mark that you want to hit for their vitals. And then if they're going away from you or they're strutting away from you, right at the base of the fan, old Texas heart shot, that's the best shot for that one. Which, for bow, I found out if they're fanned away and they have the fan and they're you got a Texas heart shot, that's the best time to pull back too. Because if they're fanned out, their head's on the other side, they can't see you because the fan's in the way. So if you ever have that opportunity, that's the best time to pull back without getting busted because they have really good eyesight. So some practicing tips, just practice close. One thing that someone told me a long time ago that I picked up on, and it's really been pretty cool and pretty good to know, is 5 at 40 or 40 at 5 is what he said. So what that is using my 40-yard pin. I have a 20, 30, 40. Using my 40-yard pin at 5 yards, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, and it's dead on. If you use your 20-yard pin at 5 yards, you're going to be low. And the reason for that is your arrow starts about here, so your sights are around here. At 5 yards, your arrow doesn't have enough time to meet up to your sights or vice versa. And so if you're at 5 yards, your arrow is just going to go low of where you're aiming with your 20-yard pin. So use your 40-yard pin, which is below your 20-yard pin. That brings your bow up, brings your arrow up, and that puts you dead on. So that's the main thing for practicing, and just knowing that if you have your decoys at 5 yards, 40-yard pin is what you're going to want to use. And practice that before you do it. Make sure that's the case. Sometimes it can be a little different depending on where your D loop's knocked and how your rest sits. But another thing I wanted to go over was the setups. You 100% don't have to have a different setup for using a bow. Some people will change their setup just because it is a little bit nicer to leave an arrow in the turkey. So to do that, you need to have a little bit less kinetic energy, less speed, and that will help you leave your arrow in the turkey, which the main reason for that is you don't want the turkey to fly away. So if you leave the arrow in it, they have a tougher time flying. If you shoot, get a pass through, they can still fly, which most of the time, if you have a good shot, you're gonna be fine. But sometimes it can be tough to find if they do that. So different setup. If you are gonna do it, lower your poundage if you can. Um, 40 pounds is fine. 40 and up, whatever you're comfortable with. Lower weight of an arrow. So if you have a lighter arrow, that's going to help. It'll put your speed up, but if you're putting your poundage down, a lighter arrow will still be fine. And then what I like to do is a big cut broadhead. So if you can get 2+ inches on a broadhead, that's a good starter point. I use a mechanical Spitfire. It is a front deploying, so the blades flip back, and that helps slow down the arrow a little bit too. You lose a little bit of kinetic energy with that, which for turkeys is, I think, ideal. Like I said, you don't have to do that, but if you want to, it's something you can do. Jake, anything else?
Yeah, I actually had a question for you, and just as in like the new bow hunter and getting new into turkey hunting, what if they have a single pin setup? And it may not be a stupid question, but would you recommend people with a single pin that's like, say if it's not adjustable or whatever, what should they sight in according to the single pin? Like if they have like a um 5 yard setup with decoys, or 10 yard setup decoys, like what do you recommend to get that, like the nice average shot, I guess, between 5 to 20 yards? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. So, like I said, 5 to 20 yards is average. So if you're setting up just specifically for that, I would just change my sights altogether. Even if I didn't have a single pin, if that's what you want to do, have like a 5 yard pin, or a 10. You could have a 10 yard pin, and then just change your range. Make sure you're not shooting over 15 yards or whatever, if that's what you're comfortable with. But if you're just using a single pin slider, try the 40-yard trick. Put your slider at 40 yards. Practice with it, then keep it there. And then if they don't come to the decoys for some reason, I would just leave it there. And if they don't come, just slide it up and do what you have to do from there. But yeah, personally, if I don't use a single pin, but if I did, I'd probably do the 40-yard trick. And then if they don't come in, I would just slide it.
Awesome. Yeah, it was just kind of like a new bow hunter or like a new turkey hunter kind of suggestion thing if we got new listeners to the podcast. So as in what I do with my bow setup when it comes to turkey hunting, I personally don't change anything besides my broadheads. So normally I run a mechanical during deer season. And I have I think they're Ramcats is what I was shooting this year, and they're also a forward opening broadhead. I never, like, the turkeys I shot, I always used fixed blades. That was just kind of what my dad had me in. It was a Muzzy. That's what he had me in growing up, and that's what I always used for turkey hunting because I had good luck with them. And like touching on what Aaron said, you don't want a complete pass through when it comes to shooting a turkey because you want them to stay grounded. You don't want them to fly away because if they fly away, they can go like 100 yards and you have no blood, no way of tracking them. Like just like what Aaron said. I always wondered about using an expandable, and especially a forward opening expandable on a turkey because of the feathers. I know if you shoot a turkey with a shotgun in the body, the pellets won't penetrate the feathers. And like me thinking that way, and the opening forward expandable broadheads is, would that deflect the arrow and like in the penetration sense, I guess, in shooting the turkey. But I know Aaron has always used the Spitfires and he's had really good luck with them and everything. So I just never really thought about using an expandable when it comes to shooting a turkey. I just always use the 100 grain Muzzies, and just like we were saying, is like you don't want that like full pass through penetration. I don't lower my poundage, but I will take a broadhead that I've used to sight in the bow, or like get my bearings in sighting in the bow, and I'll use that for the turkey hunt because it's still sharp. It'll still cut you, but it won't have like that super sharp edge to where like that 60. I think I'm shooting like 62 pounds right now. It just won't fly right through the bird. So, but that's what I've used. It's always worked great for me. But yeah, so switching hands into hunting a turkey with your shotgun and getting it patterned for turkey hunting. So the two main calibers people hunt with is a 20 gauge, especially youth hunters. They use 20 gauges, especially if they're shooting 3-inch shells. Like it'll knock you right on your butt. So, but as a 20 gauge and a 12 gauge, I use both. I've shot birds with both, and I tend to favor my 20 gauge more than my 12, but it's just kind of however I'm feeling that day and which one I use. So when it comes to patterning your shotgun, you're gonna want to find a turkey choke. It helps a ton when you're patterning your shotgun, because when you go on a turkey hunting, you're gonna want to have a tight pattern shot. So you don't want it like you're gonna want it about the size of a paper plate. That's like the good all around shot basically. I shoot the Primos. It's just a cheap a turkey choke, $20. Like I'm like the economy hunter. Like I don't go out and try to buy the best things or whatever, but I just buy what works, and it's always worked for me. I've had this particular choke on my 20 gauge for probably 7 years now, and I've taken a bird at 50 yards with it with my 20. So when it comes into buying a choke, you're just gonna want something that'll get that pattern into about the size of a paper plate. And like speaking in the pattern, when you shoot, every gun is gonna throw a shot a different way. So you can take your shotgun, whatever you're gonna use, and throw a shell in it of like whatever brand. I've always used Winchester Double X or something. I think that's what it's called. It's a Turkey Low by Winchester. It's always shot great for me. I never had to change my setup or anything. You're gonna want to try different brands of shells, because each shell will throw different through the gun. So say like I run a single bead, just regular field barrel for my shotgun. You can buy red dots, you can buy scopes, you can buy rifle iron sights to go on the bead of your barrel. It'll clip right on there, or it'll screw right on there. You can get actual iron sights for turkey hunting for your shotgun. So I just run the single bead. So when it comes to me and patterning my gun, I got to find the right shells that'll shoot the straightest out of my gun. So basically, when it comes to that, that's what you're gonna have to do if you're just running the single bead. But if you want to buy the rifles, the iron sights, or the red dot scope, or just a regular shotgun scope that goes on the shotgun, it's a little bit easier because you can just tune the iron sights or tune the scope to where your pattern is. So going into that, shooting the turkey with a shotgun, Aaron went over shooting it with a bow. And so when you're shooting a turkey with a shotgun, you're gonna want to aim in the most vulnerable spot on the bird. So like I said earlier, if you shoot a turkey with a shotgun around 40 yards in the body, the BBs won't even penetrate the feathers. When they get closer in, they'll penetrate the feathers, but toms are a super muscular bird. Turkeys are really muscular. Those things can weigh 25, 30 pounds getting up to the heavier scale. So it'll be harder to shoot through the feathers, through the muscle of the bird to get to the vitals. So when you're shooting a turkey, you're going to want to aim at the head and in the neck area. It's like a 7-inch, 8-inch window that you can shoot. The sweet spot I like aiming for is it's right where the head meets the neck from the body. So it covers the whole vital area in the paper plate. Most of the time you get like it's an instant kill because you're either breaking their neck or essentially you're shooting in the head. So you know what that can do from there. And so if you're just going into turkey hunting for meat, like if you're just a meat hunter and you don't really care about what bird that you shoot, like you can't shoot a hen during the spring season. But if you're shooting a tom or jake and you don't care about shooting, you just want the meat, just aim for the head and you're all good. But when it comes to trying to get that fan or trying to get the strutting feathers that come up, the real colorful feathers that come into the fan, you're going to want to wait until the bird is either not strutting or when it goes, it'll sometimes, like if the bird is strutting, it'll walk around and it'll lean its head forward out of the strut. Is it like, if you guys don't know what we're talking about when a bird is strutting, Google a picture of a strutting tom turkey, so that way you can kind of see what we mean, how their heads are tucked into their body, and it's like you literally, like, they're super tucked into the feathers. So if you shoot them, it'll ruin all those feathers and potentially not get a good ethical shot on the turkey. So when they are strutting, they will sometimes, like if they don't hear anything, they will lean their head forward away from their body, and that is the best time to shoot. Like any time that the head is away from the body is the most optimal time to shoot a turkey, if you're going for the fan and everything as well. So
Awesome, guys. Aaron, do you have anything else to add for killing a turkey with a shotgun?
Yeah. So pretty much what Jake was saying about target shooting and patterning your gun, pretty much the same thing. You just got to find the setup that works for you. Look at reviews, just like anything you buy in the hunting industry. You want to look at reviews, see what other people are saying, and then weigh your options there, see what's best reviewed. So chokes, ammo, guns, even sights, whatever. Just review them, check them out, and make your decision that way. And then you might have to change something down the road, bullets, whatever. And then, yeah, like Jake was saying, I aim for the wattles, which is like the balls pretty much on their neck, down at the bottom, it's their glands. I aim right for that. It's kind of good spot that you will, if you miss one way, you're going to hit the head. If you miss the other way, you're going to hit their neck, their throat and everything. So wattles is what I aim for. And then just a tip that I use to kind of get their head away from them when they're strutting is if I have a diaphragm call in my mouth, give them a couple clucks, purrs, whatever. And if they gobble, that's a good time to shoot them. So when I'm using my gun, I always have my diaphragm, at least in my cheek. So if I have like a good shot on them, but I want to get their head away, give them a couple clucks. And if they gobble, that's the perfect time to shoot them without destroying their fan or anything. So that's pretty much all I got for that. But Jake did a pretty good job on covering everything.
Yeah, you guys both, left a lot of good tips for gun and bow. One thing that I just want to stress over and over and over again is, shot placement is key. One thing that us as a group in Sportsman's Quest are really big on is just ethical kills. That's the one thing that hunters sometimes can get a bad rap for is, out there hurting animals and this and that. And really what it comes down to is you can always make a good or a bad shot, no matter how much you practice. Stuff does happen. But it's always good to be prepared. Make sure your equipment's prepared. Make sure you put in the work, and make sure you study the anatomy of the animal, whether it's a turkey, deer, etc. to make sure that when you step out into the field, you're confident with your abilities and your equipment, that you can actually make an ethical kill, you know, to be a good sportsman and you know, move the sport of hunting in the right direction as a whole. So yeah, that's awesome, guys. You guys really laid out some good tips for everybody. So the next thing we're going to talk about is some hunting strategies. So I know the first two we're going to cover is hunting off the roost, and run and gun. So I know personally, last year, as I've said, was my first year turkey hunting. To be honest with you, I had no clue how to turkey hunt. The only, you know, hunting that I could really associate with at that time was, you know, what everybody, well, majority of people do, deer hunt. I figured we'd go sit where we think they're going to walk by and hopefully we get one, to where that's not really the case at all. So I'll pass it off to Jake. He can kind of cover hunting off the roost and run a gun, which one he prefers, and how he approaches each one. So have at it, Jake.
All right, guys. So when it comes to hunting off the roost, basically every time that I try to hunt off the roost, as in like going out the night before, like we talked about in the previous episode, I would try to set up in the area that I think the birds are going to fly off the roost, as in a food source, or going to the dust bowls, or like trying to find the most frequent path taken by the turkeys. When you think about hunting off the roost, you got to think about how they are going to come off. So when turkeys fly, when they try to fly, they get in the roost. Or if you ever seen a turkey take off from like trying to evade, they fly straight away. They're a heavy bird. They're not really graceful in the air. So when you think of birds flying off the roost, you got to think that they're just going to glide down. They're not going to put in effort to just try to keep themselves to fly down right to the base of the tree. So when you hunt off the roost, you want to try to stay back at least, like, I would say at least like 60, 70 yards away, like, because that's kind of the average yardage that I've seen birds fly off the roost. And then they hit down, then you're either coming right into the setup that you have, or like, so when I talk about setup, like in that instinct, I try a couple things. Where I grew up, we always had a guy, and this is a true story. This guy would go out, and he loved turkeys or something. I don't know. I've never met him, but I've been out in the woods when he was doing this. He would go out and just mock call the turkeys. So they got smart into knowing what an actual hen sounds like, and what just an average Joe going out there trying to call turkeys. Or he would always locate them at the same time every single night. So when it came into hunting these birds, I had to get smart with them, as in they would always come into my setup around like 50, 60 yards away. They would never come closer. Jake's would. They would come in and do their normal thing of the kind of attack each other or attack the decoys and everything. But the toms that I had on the property would always stay like just outside of range if I had a gun, or just outside the range if I had a bow. Like, I swear they knew exactly where I was. So if I tried to hunt those birds off the roost, I would either set up like normal, like how I would normally do, set up like 50, 60 yards away, put my decoys out, try not to call before you hear them get down, because if you call them before they get down, they're going to be kind of on edge, because they generally kind of get down at the same time, or at least where I hunted the birds at, they got down at the same time. Then they would start like going about their business and doing the normal calls, and you can hear the hens light up and everything. So try not to call before they get down off the roost, or if you do, just make it real minimal kind of things. And that's what I've always done. I would either do that or I would set back the decoys around 100 yards, so further back. Then I would, and this is if you're hunting with a buddy too, it helps a ton. Have him set up on the decoys and do the calling. Then you set up around the 50, 60-yard mark where you think they're going to fly off the roost, and you're going to meet them right there. And like you're in a halfway point. So that's what I was talking about, how I had to get smart to hunt these birds, because they would always stay just outside of range. So I had the guys, either my brother or my dad or another buddy who used to hunt with me, he would set up with the decoys and he would call for me, and I would set 50, 60 yards in front of them in between the birds and try to cut them off that way. And I did have luck one time with the bird, so I got one, but that was it. And they got smart from now on, and it's super hard to hunt the birds around my house. So that's kind of a couple ways that you can hunt off the roost, and I'm sure Aaron, like doing the pre-scouting that he does, has different takes on what he does, but that's always what worked for me. And hunting swamp birds, as I would say, because I hunted on a huge swamp, most like hardly any woods, all swamp. So that was kind of like what I had to do to set up for the birds. And when you talk about run and gun, what do you mean by like run and gun? Kind of like when I do with the, like I would go out and call and stalk them, or are you talking about like if you see them, you kind of meet a halfway point, try to cut them off that way? Is that what you're trying to say, Ryan? By run and gun?
Yeah, that'd be running gun.
Yeah, run and gun, like you go out there, call, you hear one, and you try to go set up on them.
Right. Okay. So that's basically what I've always done when I hunted. So like I always try to, like in like the early season, at least try to get on the roost setup a couple times, or kind of meet them in between that roost setup when they're going to roost. But most of the time I would always go out late morning and try to pick them up, locate them, um, uh, use my diaphragm call, like Aaron said, and that's actually you can get kind of loud with that. So that's a really good locator that I've always used. You can use a box call as well, but I never picked the art up of using a box call. I could do it, but then like if you move your hand a little bit and it screeches, and you feel horrible because you're a bad call, but bad turkey caller. But I've always used a diaphragm call, and I purr with it. And when they get closer, I use a slate or a glass call with a striker. But as in the run and gun, I would always go out with a diaphragm. I would kind of sneak my way out there and kind of get out in the middle of the woods before, trying not to spook any deer up and everything too. Then I'll hit my call. Then most of the time I always get a response, is boom, just like that. Um, then basically, as in that, when you want to go set up on the birds, you don't have any decoys, or if you do, you're going to throw one up real quick and set back off of it like 10, 15 yards, or depending on if you have a bow or if you have a quick, like maybe one of those ghost blinds or whatever, you can set up on it if you want to do it that way. But I'd always try to, so when a tom hears the turkey call, like if they hear me cluck and they respond, and you get them to respond again, like if you call and they respond again, most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, they're going to commit to you. And the bird may take like an hour getting there, or it might zoom right there. It depends on how hot they are. So when you get a tom to locate, then you hear them locate again, you call them and they locate themselves again. And they're just kind of, they're hot, they're going crazy. You're going to move towards them a little bit to kind of cut them off. And then you're going to want to find a setup to sit next to, in the base of a tree or in a down tree. Depends on what weapon you're using. The shotgun is going to be easiest for running gun, because like you literally can just pick the gun up and put it on its head. You kind of sit there the whole time with the gun up in the sitting position, and you'll be ready all the time. With a bow, it's a little bit more difficult to do run and gun, I think, because you're gonna have to sit either behind a tree or like in the base of the tree on your knees or however you can pull back your bow, you're going to be eye level out in the open. If you're doing the traditional run and gun, like you spot them, like you get them to locate and you're just trying to cut them off and take a shot. I've always had a hard time with the bow doing that. But with the shotgun, it's a lot easier doing it that way. But they do have a real keen sense of hearing, and they will go to that spot to where they located you the first time. So you want to cut them a little bit and come back off and just set up your spot and wait for them. That's the experience I've had. I've had good luck with it. I learned that the hard way when it came to like doing the run and gun. I did exactly what I said. I located them. I had 2 toms going crazy, and I moved towards them a little bit, set up. I got down in a down tree, and I was in the tree. I was perfect setup, and I had them calling. And then I stopped. Then an hour went by. Then it was blank, nothing. I was like, man, would these birds just give up or whatever? So I got up, moved up like 80 yards north of me, and set up on top of a ridge. And like, this is a true story. I lit up the call again. Then, boom, both those toms were in the spot where I just was. My setup where I just was. They both lit up 10 yards away from where I was sitting, and so yeah, so that's how I found out how long they will take and how accurate their hearing is to where they heard that call. Then going into that, you can, like what I did, as in, like, if you don't get anything for like an hour, you can move, like try to move 50 yards. Those birds that like I called and they came in, and I just couldn't get a shot with the ridge, the way the ridge was, and I just couldn't get an ethical shot, so I didn't take it. But you can move like I did, like 50, 60 yards if you're not getting that, like you're not getting another response, and you can light up that call, and they lit up again, just like I said, but they were in the spot that I just was in. But that's another good way that you can get the birds to locate again if you think they're committed to you. So, but that's my experiences with them. But yeah, so yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to episode 2 of the Turkey series. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow on all social media forums, check out our website. We appreciate you guys listening. Drop any comments below if you have any tips. If you want to share your setup for turkey season, bow, gun, whatever. We're excited to see it. We're always here to learn and share knowledge that we have. We appreciate you guys, and thanks for listening.